All right, we are live. What are we looking into? I think this Citrini, I think it's Citrini piece has done waves in the market. I believe Bloomberg did announce that, yes, the market downturn, whatever the 10% fall, 20% fall was due to the Citrini article. And people are definitely saying that this is science fiction, this is a hypothetical, some people understand that this is just a hypothetical, it is a scenario that might happen in 2028, but it is science fiction, it is taking into consideration some things that won't happen, that are too far out, and definitely there will be measures taken by the Fed to stop something like this from happening. But still, this was taken to the utmost. The scenario, the science fiction was, or the sci-fi, the fictional story was taken to, was kind of extrapolated as a future 100% probability, and that led to a lot of downturn. But obviously there are things happening, there are things that are going to shake up, there are conversation happening over here. We don't know exactly, but we want to be really careful before we take into account all these doom scenarios. It's really important. Okay, what are the consequences of the Citrini article around global intelligence crisis in 2028? It got Citrini article right. That's pretty good. WisprFlow is getting better. WisprFlow, I learned about Tana yesterday, so we are working with WisprFlow over here. We got the subscriptions. It is amazing. It works incredibly well, especially when you're working with LLM, when you want to ask a question. It's incredible when you can give it a lot of context, because there's a difference between when you talk versus when you type. When you type, you kind of simplify things, you don't add too much detail, you don't add too much emotion. When you are talking to AI, when you're talking to an LLM, you are obviously adding much more details, much more context, and that leads to better and better responses. But anyways, let's look into this. WisprFlow, what did we look into? So Tane is actually pretty hardcore, or he's incredibly smart. He was in high school, he was studying in Delhi public school, RK Puram, and then right over there he did a bunch of things. He worked in a NASA team. He worked in a NASA team. He did some national level or international level Olympiads, and then he went to Stanford CSAI. He was an assistant teacher with Andrew NG. I don't know how to say his last name, but Andrew, the main guy in machine learning. So he actually has an incredible story, and he started with Whisper. Whisper was supposed to be where it translates your thoughts into text, so very similar to Neuralink. And then slowly they just build that into Flow, because they're like, oh, this is actually something what people need, the software dictation layer. But it would be interesting, like for WisprFlow to actually start with this original idea of Whisper, that thoughts to text, to now going to actually speech to text, to again slowly building back up to thoughts to text. I think it would be incredible. It would be incredible if this is the next layer. They pretty much have their roadmap in place, and they're kind of a thing where they were like, okay, talk to WisprFlow, and if there's an error that shows up, we will gift you a Porsche 911, whatever, GT3 RS. So this is pretty cool. They are really focusing on the fact that, yes, the way you want to talk, the context of the conversation, the context of the platform that you're talking to, where are you messaging on iMessage versus are you messaging on Slack, on a company's communication platform. Based on that context, it will understand, it will bullet points your thoughts, I think they also have this idea of reducing the editing as well. Like the editing, as you were speaking, is so clear that you won't even go back and edit it. So they are not only just thinking about the precision of catching all the words, they're also getting the editing right. They are also then formatting it right. And right now, slowly, they're also getting these words right, these very specific nouns right, which is incredible. Like it got Citrini, it gets Schopenhauer, it gets Schrodinger, and something like that happens. You are like, this is incredible, because there's no way I can always, like Nietzsche. There's no way I'm gonna remember how to spell Nietzsche. I always have to look it up. I don't know how to spell Nietzsche, Friedrich Nietzsche. So that is incredible, like how it is able to get all these nouns right. So obviously human skills are reducing. My skill of remembering the spelling of Nietzsche is reducing. But do I care more about Nietzsche's ideas, or do I care about the spelling of Nietzsche? I care about Nietzsche's ideas more. His ideas are something that touch to your soul. And I think this is something that's going to happen more and more, where the surface layer information is going to become so easy to interact with that you can actually go and form connections with human. Yesterday I actually saw a pretty cool video. So Cat GPT, there's this girl, Cat GPT. I forgot, I think she was ex-Googler, she was ex something, and then she just turned into a YouTuber, podcaster, started making videos about this. And she graduated from Stanford, so she was like, I went back to my alma mater. I went back to Stanford to basically learn about, hey, what are these younger generation, what are these current generation of students who are in university, and everything is changing. The way universities conduct assignments, the way they grade, everything is changing. How are they adapting right now? So there was a really interesting discussion around research paper in Stanford. You have to write research papers. I was actually not sure, was this for HBS? It would be very interesting to do a conversation like this, it was a really good setup. She actually had this, she was in the classroom, and she was like constantly just asking questions that, okay, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? How do you think professors are adapting to AI? What do you think? Is there a line where you think that, okay, this is something that I should be using AI for, this is something where I shouldn't be using AI for, this is something that I should keep for myself because that is going to help me improve my skills? Very good line of questioning. But I was really surprised that nobody actually over there talked about the fact that, hey, the human part is just going to become way more important. Why are humans competing with machines? Why are humans competing with machines? The machine will take care of all the machine stuff, so humans can focus on humans. That's a good one. Machines will take care of all the machine stuff, so humans can focus on human stuff. Nice. Machines will take care of all the machine stuff, so humans can focus on human stuff. By the way, I was looking at this one post where this guy is like, I don't train arms at all. Rephrase. Machines will handle the machine will take care of the machine. Machine will take care of the machine stuff. Machines will take care of all the machine stuff, so humans can focus on the human stuff. Okay. Parfait. Okay, Citrini. Let's go, Citrini. Citrini has caused some chaos in the market, so let's look into this. One of the most consequential pieces of financial writing in recent memory, and the fallout has been playing out in real time over just the last 48 hours. Founded by James Van Keeden, published a speculative macro memo from the future, co-authored with Alap Shah of Lotus. Employment has shot up to 10.2% due to mass AI-driven white-collar displacement. Ghost GDP, output created by AI that inflates national accounts but never actually circulates through the real economy because machines spend $0 on discretionary goods. An intelligence displacement spiral, a negative feedback loop where AI adoption leads to layoffs, reduced spending, more AI adoption, and so on. Immediate market impact was severe. Sharp risk-off move that wiped billions of the value of US listed firms. Michael Berry amplified it on X with "And you think I'm bearish?" A discussion racked up roughly 16 million views. The 2028 Global Intelligence Dividend by Carlo. And there are pieces about pieces. I think this is the interesting part. When you have like something that is this at this level that affects the market, then you have the first reactions, then the reactions to the first reactions, then the reactions to the reactions to the negative, the reactions to the negative reactions of the first reactions of the article. That's where things get very interesting. On the specific mechanism, the Citrini Memo describes a feedback loop in which AI simultaneously destroys demand, collapses housing, triggers private credit cascades, and breaks the circular flow of the economy within 24 months. Requires a set of assumptions about the speed of adoption, the absence of countervailing forces, and the paralysis of institutions that are individually plausible but collectively extreme. The world is messy, sticky, slow, and full of people and organizations that resist, adapt, and redirect in ways that macro models struggle to capture. The canary is not dead, but it is coughing. And the right response to a coughing canary is not to declare the mind safe and go back to work. It is to check the ventilation, shore up the supports, and have an exit plan. The non-doomer version of this fictional story is not nothing changes. It is a world in which AI is highly capable and the circulation mechanisms, competition, complements, and policy prevent the left tail feedback loop from locking in. This is not a prediction, it is a set of conditions. Whether we meet them is not up to the models, it is up to us. If automation shifts income toward capital, the fiscal system must adapt or it will become pro-cyclical in the worst possible way. There is active work on this. The Brookings Institution has published frameworks for AI era public finance. Australia's National AI Plan explicitly aims to share the benefits across the community. Tax design that rebalances towards AI era rents and compute intensity rather than only wages. Let me check quick thing. Okay. Parfait. Let's continue with Claude. The Dow launched over 800 points. I should ask the same question to Super Grok. Let's see. Yesterday we were diving deep into the GLP-1 drugs. Today we are going deep in the Citrini article. The Dow lost over 800 points and closed at the day's low. Breadth was brutal, with just 27% of stocks gaining. DoorDash, American Express, KKR, and Blackstone all dropped more than 8%, while Uber, MasterCard, Visa, Capital One, and Apollo fell at least 3%. The timing was amplified by Anthropic's same-day announcement about Claude code handling, COBOL modernization, which sent IBM down nearly 12%, the Dow's biggest loser. Since COBOL maintenance is a $30 billion annual market, representing some of the IBM's highest margin business. It's good for society that you have some stuff like this. I'm pretty sure that the engineers, the COBOL engineers, would be happy that the work that they spend so much time doing, which they thought was grunt work, is now taken away by machines. Broad intellectual debate it sparked is arguably more consequential than the sell-off itself. Several prominent rebuttals emerged within hours. Noah Smith, no opinion, argue that this is really two theses in one: a microeconomic thesis about which industries AI will disrupt, macroeconomic thesis about what this does to the economy overall. And the macro thesis is much weaker. Carl Iacono's dividend counterpiece noted that the Citrini scenario requires air to diffuse unevenly. Competition to fail to distribute gains broadly. Competition to fail to distribute gains broadly. I think this one is really important. This is definitely something that people are forgetting about, which is open source models. Open source models are coming. What are the top open source LLM models today? Oh, yes. Taking longer than usual. Government student essentially nothing. All three failing simultaneously within 2 years, which is a very specific left tail outcome. Colin McNamara's response argued that Citrini model AI exclusively as labor substitution. It is really surprising. I think the US government should have a proper consortium. I think not consortium, but what should be happening? I think US government should definitely make sure that yes, competition is good. They're not only competing within themselves, but they're also competing against the rivals of US, let's say, which is actually a really good narrative that helps them make a lot of money. But I think there has to be a way how for US government to trickle down these developments to every citizen of US. At least they should start somewhere. Yeah. How do you help every member of your country to start adopting these things? The same economy minus humans without modeling capability creation, which is the missing half that changes the picture. Even a big tech commenter from a Max 7 AI division pushed back, noting that investors and management are working off very simplistic models of how things work and generally seem to think AI is magic. Though they conceded that the negotiating leverage point that it doesn't matter if you can re-implement SaaS with AI, only that you can convince the salesperson you think you can is a genuinely valuable insight. And the half they didn't write. Wow, there were massive rebuttal articles of this one article. Okay. And the half they didn't write. Sharp scenario about AI breaking the economy, but they only model labor substitution, not capability creation. Here's what's missing. That's right. Capability creation is missing. Yes. What Citrini and Shah got right, the negative feedback loop is sound. The financial contagion chain is real. Private credit loaded with PE-backed SaaS deals, funded by insurance company annuity deposits linked through offshore reinsurance structures. When the underlying loans go bad, the opacity of who holds the losses is dangerous. The trace is chain from Zendesk, 10.2 billion LVO defaulting through to Athens financial strength rating getting downgraded, and the mechanics hold up. The mortgage inside is sharp. The loans were bad on day one. In the 28th, the loans were good on day one. The world just changed after they were written. A 780 FICO product manager who put 20% down isn't subprime, but if their job category is being structurally eliminated, the income assumptions underlying the mortgage are still broken. Output that shows up in national accounts but never circulates through the real economy. GPU cluster in North Dakota does the work of 10,000 Manhattan workers. It produces GDP. It doesn't produce restaurant visits, apartment leases, or income tax revenue, all worth taking seriously, but the piece rests on a framing choice that limits its conclusion. The physical world isn't software. Economy has frozen its shape with AI just removing humans from it. But AI plus robotics doesn't just make existing factories cheaper, it makes new categories of manufacturing possible. Categories. Generative design is producing parts no human engineer would conceive of. AI optimized supply chains can run lights out manufacturing. AI optimized supply chain can run lights out manufacturing. Small batch custom production that was never economically viable is becoming routine. Their own scenario has all of GE Vernova's turbine capacity sold out through 2040. They mention it as evidence that AI infrastructure is booming, but never ask who's building all that capacity, who's installing it, who's maintaining it, and what jobs that creates. The physical world is a bottleneck that AI alone can solve. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. Analyze the entire situation that Citrini article portrays from a Vedantic lens. Are people too worried about the money aspect? Are people too worried about the money aspect? We need to be thinking about how there is a massive advancement in humanity happening right over here. It's a rich inquiry, Prashant. Let me go deep. Stripped to its philosophical skeleton is describing something that Vedanta diagnosed millennia ago: the catastrophic consequences of mistaking the instrument for the essence. Yes, when you only focus on GDP growth, or building an entire civilization on a category error about what human beings fundamentally are. About what human beings fundamentally are. Very interesting. Very interesting. The catastrophic consequences of mistaking the instrument for the essence, of building an entire civilization on a category error about what human beings fundamentally are. The core category error, confusing Buddhi with Atman. The entire modern economy, as Citrini implicitly reveals, is built on a single, unstated metaphysical premise: that human value is equivalent to human cognitive output. The entire modern economy, as Citrini implicitly reveals, is built on a single, unstated metaphysical premise: that human value is equivalent to human cognitive output. We only value humans. What are all the aspects of being human? What a beautifully impossible question, the kind that every tradition has tried to answer and none has fully captured. The embodied dimension. We are biological creatures first: hunger, fatigue, desire, aging, the felt sense of inhabiting a body that is simultaneously us and something we observe. The Taittiriya Upanishads Anmaya Kosha points at this: the sheath made of food. The affective dimension. Emotion is a primary way of knowing, not just feelings as reactions, but as a fundamental orientation toward the world. Grief, wonder, love, dread. Grief, wonder, love, dread. The Rus tradition understood that these aren't noise in the system, they are the system revealing itself. Not just feelings as reactions, but as a fundamental orientation toward the world. Grief, wonder, love, dread. The Rus tradition understood that these aren't noise in the system, they are the system revealing itself. The cognitive dimension, pattern recognition, abstraction, language, the capacity to model the future and revisit the past. Pattern recognition, abstraction, language, the capacity to model the future and revisit the past. What makes us both brilliant and neurotic? We can't stop narrating. Abstraction, language, the capacity to model the future and revisit the past. What makes us both brilliant and neurotic? We can't stop narrating. The social and relational. We are constituted by others. Mirror neurons. Language acquisition. Need for recognition. Buber's, I, thou, Ubuntu's, I am because we are. No human has ever become human alone. The meaning-making dimension. We are the animal that asks why. Myth, religion, philosophy, art. Myth, religion, philosophy, art. All responses to the unbearable fact that we can contemplate our own existence and death. Nietzsche's insight that we would rather will nothingness than not will at all. We'd rather will nothingness than not will at all. The creative and generative. Not just reproduction, but poiesis, bringing forth, building, composing, coding, cooking, the impulse to leave a mark, to transmute inner experience into outer form. The creative and generative, not just reproduction, but poiesis, bringing forth, building, composing, coding, cooking, the impulse to leave a mark, to transmute inner experience into outer form. The temporal dimension, we are the only beings that we know of who live in three tenses simultaneously: memory, anticipation, and strange thin line of presence. Memory, anticipation, and the strange thin line of presence. Heidegger's Dasein, being toward death as the condition that makes anything matter at all. The transcendent or witnessing dimension, the sakshi, the witness, that irreducible awareness that observes even observation. Whether you frame it as Atman, Buddha, nature, or simply the hard problem of consciousness, there's something it's like to be us, and we can notice that noticing. The shadow dimension, self-deception, cruelty, tribalism, the capacity for extraordinary violence alongside extraordinary compassion. Self-deception, cruelty, tribalism, the capacity for extraordinary violence alongside extraordinary compassion. Jung was right that wholeness isn't goodness, it's the integration of what we would rather not claim. The paradoxical dimension, perhaps the most human thing of all. We are finite beings who can conceive of infinity, determined creatures who experience freedom, separate selves who dissolve in love, flow states, and deep meditation. The coincidentia oppositorum, we are the place where contradictions don't resolve but learn to dance. No list like this is complete, of course. That's the part of the answer to being human includes the inability to fully capture what being human is. The map can never be the territory when the territory is also the map maker. Interesting. First we'll go over here. Okay. The entire modern economy is built on a single understated metaphysical premise. The human value is equivalent to human cognitive output, but as we saw, it's not just this, but even more. Embodied, affective, emotional, cognitive, social, relational, meaning making, creative and generative, temporal. This temporal thing is very interesting. Being toward death as the condition that makes anything matter at all. The transcendent or witnessing dimension. Irreducible awareness that observes even observation. We can notice that noticing. We can notice that noticing. The shadow and the paradoxical. So many dimensions of being a human. The scarce input that has defined the entirety of modern economic history is, in their framing, human intelligence. The capacity to process, analyze, decide, create. This is Buddhi, the intellect, the discriminating faculty. In Sankhya Vedantic taxonomy, Buddhi is part of Prakriti, the manifest material world. It is an instrument, a remarkably refined instrument, but an instrument nonetheless. What AI has done, from a Vedantic standpoint, is simply build a better version of one layer of the Antkaran, the inner instrument. And the civilizational panic that Citrini narrates is the panic of a culture that has no philosophical framework for human worth beyond that instrument. If you've spent centuries telling people they are valuable because they can think, analyze, write code, and manage portfolios, draft legal briefs, and that a machine does all of that, if you spend centuries telling people they are valuable because they can think, analyze, write code, manage portfolios, draft legal briefs, and then a machine does all of that, you haven't just created an economic crisis, you have created an ontological one. Oh my God. Oh my God. The question the displaced worker is really asking isn't how will I pay my mortgage? That's a surface manifestation. The question is, what am I? if not my productive intellect? Wow. Wow. This has happened on a civilizational level. This has happened on a civilizational level where we have started measuring what became easy to measure. We have this concept of measure what matters. But because money, mortgage, numbers, lifespan, interest rates, all this stuff is easy to measure, we started measuring them. We started measuring them because they were easy to measure. And that has manifested on a civilizational scale. And the civilizational panic that Citrini narrates is the panic of a culture that has no philosophical framework for human worth beyond that instrument. If you have spent centuries telling people they are valuable because they can think, analyze, write code, manage portfolios, draft legal briefs, and then a machine does all of that, you haven't just created an economic crisis, you have created an ontological one. I actually don't know the meaning of ontological. What is the meaning of ontological? What actually exists? What is fundamentally real? What is the nature of being itself? So when something is called ontological, it is not about opinion, strategy, psychology, economics. It is about the level of reality itself, not the chess moves, the board, not the story, the fact that there is a storyteller. Concerning what something is at its deepest level. I don't know. I also don't understand like why Elon doesn't really hates Claude, because Claude is doing something good, and just because Elon said that, let me test if Grok is better at this. We'll test Grok because I want to see. You have to appreciate what is good. Grok is really good at this stuff, this poetic essay writing, which makes sense, connecting the right dots. We're talking about two totally different concepts. You're talking about one article that came out recently. We're talking about an old ancient text from Indian scriptures, and it is now picking and choosing the right things to compare with each other. This is crazy. This is some crazy stuff. I want to check what Grok does, because if Grok isn't that good, I think Elon should be saying stuff like this. Okay. This is Buddhi, the intellect, the discriminating faculty. In Sankhya Vedantic taxonomy, Buddhi is part of Prakriti, the manifest material world. It is an instrument, a remarkably refined instrument. The question the displaced worker is really asking is, and how will I pay my mortgage? That's the surface manifestation. The question is, what am I, if not my productive intellect? Vedanta's answer, Tattvamasi, you are that, the unconditioned awareness prior to all cognitive function. The unconditioned awareness prior to all cognitive function is precisely the answer the civilization has no access to, and so it panics. Ghost GDP as Maya, the economy of appearances. Citrini's most striking concept, Ghost GDP, describes output that registers in national accounts but never circulates through the lived human economy. A GPU cluster in North Dakota produces the GDP equivalent of 10,000 Manhattan workers, but generates no restaurant visits, no apartment leases, no human life. This is Maya rendered in macroeconomic terms, not Maya's illusion in the popular misreading, but Maya in the precise Sankar sense, that which has Vyavaharika, Satya, transactional reality without Paramarthika, Satya, ultimate reality. Vyavaharika, Satya. Vyavaharika, transactional reality without Paramarthika, Satya. The GDP number is real at the level of measurement. It appears in the accounts. Economists can point to it, but it is mithya. It has dependent reality without independent substance. It cannot sustain itself because it has severed the link to the lived ground of being. The number exists, the life behind it does not. This is exactly the structure of Maya, not that the world is fake, but that we mistake the level at which it is real. Gross GDP is the economic equivalent of mistaking the rope for the snake. The measurement looks like wealth, but when you reach for it, there is nothing there that can feed a family. The intelligence displacement spiral as samsara. Citrini describes a feedback loop. Yeah, I'm actually really surprised, like, what is happening to DoorDash? Like, why is the DoorDash stock going down? Citrini describes a feedback loop. AI capabilities improve. Companies need fewer workers, layoffs increase, displaced workers spend less, margin pressure pushes firms to invest more in AI. AI capabilities improve, a cycle with no natural break. This is samsara not as religious metaphor, but as precise structural description. The wheel turns through its own momentum. Each revolution reinforces the conditions for the next. Each revolution reinforces the condition for the next. No agent within the system intends their destruction. Every agent is simply responding rationally to their local conditions. The CEO isn't evil for automating. They are trapped in competitive dynamics. Each revolution reinforces the condition for the next. No agent within the system intends the destruction. Every agent is simply responding rationally to their local conditions. The CEO isn't evil for automating. They are trapped in competitive dynamics. The laid off worker isn't lazy for failing to reskill. The very skills they had acquired, are being automated faster than they can learn them. This is the karmic machine operating with perfect mechanical indifference. And the Vedantic insight is that you cannot stop samsara from within samsara. You cannot solve the displacement spiral with better monetary policy or retraining programs any more than you can escape a dream by running faster inside it. These interventions operate at the level of the system that is itself the problem. The Fed can adjust interest rates. That's rearranging Vyavaharika furniture. It cannot address the fact that the civilization has built its entire self-understanding on a collapsing premise. I think this is what's going to happen. What we are truly moving towards is there's going to be a layoff on a civilizational scale. We are waiting for a layoff at a civilizational scale where everybody will be laid off from their job. And what's going to start happening is that AI is going to get so good that you are going to start approaching that true self which feels alive, which understands that your goal is to service. Your goal is to service. Your goal is to find your gift and give your gift as service. That's it. The CEO isn't evil for automating. They are trapped in competitive dynamics. Karmic machine operating with perfect mechanical indifference. And the Vedantic insight is that you cannot stop samsara from within samsara. You cannot solve the displacement spiral with better monetary policy or retraining programs any more than you can escape a dream by running faster inside it. These interventions operate at the level of the system that is itself the problem. The Fed can adjust interest rates. That's rearranging Vyavaharika furniture. It cannot address the fact that the civilization has built its entire self-understanding on a collapsing premise. The death of friction as the dissolution of Namarupa. One of Citrini's sharpest observations is that the friction AI eliminates transaction cost, information asymmetries, coordination overhead. The need for human intermediaries is the economy. Friction AI eliminates is the economy. The friction that AI eliminates is the economy. Exactly. This is it. Like, there's a lot of progress happening, but for some reason we think that progress is exactly what we were supposed to do. It's like trying to bring back factories on shore not use robots, but actually use humans. And you are now pushing your humans into these factories again. That no, go and sew clothes, sew these toys with your fingers, with your hands. We're not going to use robots. This is really good. One of Citrini's sharpest observation is that the friction AI eliminates. Transaction cost, information asymmetries, coordination overhead, the need for human intermediaries is the economy. The payment system, the legal system, the consulting industry, financial advisory, these are all elaborate structures built around the fact that knowledge is unevenly distributed and costly to deploy. Yeah, I think we need to rephrase the retraining of skills the way we talk about it. It's not retraining, it's retraining your mind, not your skills. Retraining your mind. The payment system, the legal system, the consulting industry, financial advisory, these are all elaborate structures built around the fact that knowledge is unevenly distributed and costly to deploy. AI doesn't just improve these structures, it makes the reason for their existence disappear. In Vedantic terms, this is the dissolution of Namarupa, name and form. The economy as we know it is an elaborate architecture of differentiated forms, each justified by its distinctness, each extracting value from the boundaries between things. The lawyer exists because legal knowledge is bounded. The consultant exists because strategic insight is bounded. The payment processor exists because trust is bounded. AI dissolves these boundaries. It makes knowledge unbounded, strategy abundant, trust algorithmic. And here's the terrifying Vedantic parallel. The dissolution of Namarupa is, in spiritual practice, liberation. The collapse of illusory separations, revealing the undifferentiated Brahman beneath. But the Citrini scenario describes this same dissolution as catastrophe. Why? Because the civilization experiencing it has no framework for what lies on the other side of dissolved form. If you dissolve the boundaries without having realized what exists prior to boundaries, you don't get moksha, you get nihilism with a 38% drawdown. 38% drawdown. Here's a terrifying Vedantic parallel. The dissolution of Namarupa is, in spiritual practice, liberation. The collapse of illusory separations, revealing the undifferentiated Brahman beneath. But the Citrini scenario describes this same dissolution as catastrophe. Why? Because the civilization experiencing it has no framework for what lies on the other side of dissolved form. If you dissolve the boundaries without having realized what exists prior to boundaries, you don't get moksha. If you dissolve the boundaries without having realized what exists prior to boundaries, you don't get moksha, you get nihilism with 30% drawdown. It's very funny. It's really funny. The Upanishadic diagnosis, the rebuttal myth. The counter-arguments of Citrini. Noah Smith's AI won't crash the economy. Carlo Iacono's, the scenario requires everything to fail simultaneously. Colin McNamara. Exactly. I think these guys are still saving the belief, the premise. They're still trying to defend the premise that is broken at its core. Noah, Carlo, Colin, they're still trying to defend the premise that is broken at its core. AI won't crash the economy. The scenario requires everything to fail simultaneously. The only moral substitution or creation are all operating within the same philosophical framework that produced the crisis. They are arguing about how much disruption, how fast, how distributed. These are quantitative disagreements within a shared ontological assumption. These are quantitative disagreements within a shared ontological assumption that human beings are economic agents whose value is a function of their productive output. These are quantitative disagreements. this is again like, this is very funny. This is like something that we see in Scott Galloway a lot. I think Scott Galloway, like the more you hear Scott Galloway, the more you realize the contradictions in this entire story, the more you realize the cracks in the plot, where on one end he's like, I like to feel abundant, I like to help people, I like to spend time with my family, I want to be kind. And on the other hand, he's like, if you're young, be an economic, I forgot what the word he uses, be an economic engine, or be an economic animal. Be an economic animal. How do you become an economic animal? You become an economic animal working in investment banking. You are trying to charge people for, like, you are working late hours, you are stressed, and what happens because of that stress? You are not kind to people, you are not spending time with your family, you are actually making other people's lives miserable, because if you're working private equity, you might be jacking up the rents of other people, making their lives miserable. You are like throwing people away from their homes. If you're working in investment banking, you are again like doing some sort of like, you are chasing after things that don't matter. Yeah, I don't know why this reminds me of Scott Galloway, but okay. But it's again like, the more I hear him, the more I see the contradictions over there. But anyways, Colin McNamara's The Only Moral Substitution, Not Creation, are all operating within the same philosophical framework that produced the crisis. They are arguing about how much disruption, how fast, how distributed. These are quantitative disagreements within a shared ontological assumption that human beings are economic agents whose value is a function of their productive output. None of them. I think what we are truly going for is vitality. What the North Star over here is vitality. Do you feel alive? What are the activities that you do? What do you do to make yourself feel alive? What is the state that you put yourself in to be alive? And that is both rest and at motion. And when you're at motion, you are either lifting, you are talking, you are engaging with people. These are some things. And you are lifting weights, and then you are at rest, you are meditating, you are sleeping, you are leisure, you're also enjoying leisure. So yeah, I think the North Star that we are truly looking for is vitality. These are quantitative disagreements within a shared ontological assumption that human beings are economic agents whose value is a function of their productive output. None of them ask the question the Katha Upanishad would ask: what is it that remains when you subtract all productive capacity from a human being? Is that remainder zero, or is it everything? If the answer is zero, if humans generally are nothing more than their cognitive output, then Citrini's crisis is just the market correctly repricing an asset whose fundamental value is approaching commoditization. And Citrini's crisis is just the market correctly repricing an asset whose fundamental value is approaching commoditization. Wow. If the answer is zero, what is it that remains when you subtract all the productive capacity from a human being? Is that remainder zero, or is it everything? If the answer is zero, if humans generally are nothing more than their cognitive output, then Citrini's crisis is just the market correctly repricing an asset whose fundamental value is approaching commoditization. Wow. This is beautiful. Tragic, but arithmetically straightforward. If the answer is everything, if there is something irreducible about human being that no amount of machine intelligence can replicate or substitute, then the crisis is not economic at all. It is the birth pang of a civilization being forced against its will to discover what that irreducible something is. Let's see. Citrini, how many views have you gotten? Let's see. Never really got to explain my reasoning for my SIVB short, but suffice it to say now, if you mark their holdings to market, their book value would be negative. Whoa, did they delete? No. This is the first article I've ever written with the express hope that I'm wrong. People discussing the topics raised, becoming more proactive and being aware of the risk inherent to what's happening in technologies, how that happens. I'm glad people are trying to prove or disprove it. It is the first step into realizing that a lot of it has some degree of plausibility and we should take action earlier than later. It's already in full swing in China. ByteDance's ZT phone was an early preview. Alap Shah. So you got to think about bearish outcomes. Even if you have been bullish for 3 years straight, consider bearish scenario and you are excommunicated from the Twitterati. Simply through its plausibility. Would love to see someone cope, refute this just to feel better. Lol. Site. What is it that remains when you subtract all productive capacity from a human being? Is that remainder zero? Or is it everything? If the answer is zero, if humans generally are nothing more than their cognitive input, the Citrini's crisis is just the market correctly repricing an asset whose fundamental value is approaching commoditization. What is it that remains when you subtract all productive capacity from a human being? Is that remainder zero or is it everything? If the answer is zero, if humans generally are nothing more than their cognitive output, then Citrini's crisis is just market correctly repricing an asset whose fundamental value is approaching commoditization. If the answer is everything, if there is something irreducible about a human being that no amount of machine intelligence can replicate or substitute, then the crisis is not economic at all. It is the birth pang of a civilization being forced against its will to discover what that irreducible something is. Actually, you should post this entire thing. Supreme. Citrini, come back. 9 million views. People will call this bear. Some won't like the way it's written or how it's framed. Others will ignore it entirely. That's fine. But I can guarantee you that there are ideas in here that you haven't considered before. For many of you, they will be valuable. If the answer is zero, if humans generally are nothing more than the cognitive output, then Citrini's crisis is just the market correctly repricing an asset. Tragic. If the answer is everything, if there is something irreducible in a human being that no amount of machine intelligence can replicate or substitute, then the crisis is not economic at all. It is the birth pang of a civilization being forced against its will to discover what that irreducible something is. The Brihadaranyaka's warning. There's a passage in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad where Yajnavalkya tells Maitri that it is not for the sake of the husband that the husband is dear, but for the sake of the Atman, not for the sake of wealth that wealth is dear, but for the sake of Atman. Everything we value because it points, however obliquely, toward the self. The modern economy is, in this reading, a vast and intricate apparatus for pursuing the Atman through the proxy of material security, status, and intellectual accomplishment. We don't actually want the salary. We want what we think the salary gives us: safety, dignity, recognition, freedom. Recognition, freedom. These are all shadows of Anand: safety, dignity, recognition, freedom, of the bliss that is the nature of the self. AI is stripping away the proxies, and a civilization with no direct access to what the proxies were, proxies for, is experiencing this as annihilation. Where this leaves us, the Citrini piece ends with "the canary is still alive." The Vedantic reading would add, "The canary was never what mattered. The question was always what the canary was singing about." It's not a story about machines replacing humans. It is a story about a civilization discovering through economic pain, because that is the only language it speaks, that it never understood what a human being was in the first place. The intelligence premium is collapsing because intelligence was never the essence. It was always the instrument. The real question is whether this forced vivek, this violent discrimination between the essential and the instrumental, leads to genuine inquiry or just to more sophisticated forms of denial. Whether the civilization uses the crisis to ask the question it has been avoiding for 300 years of industrial modernity: who am I when I am not what I produce? That question, sincerely asked, is not the crisis. It is the cure. It is not the crisis. It is the cure. Now, we want to look into Grok. Number one, I think it's just the font. Claude just has a better font. It feels nicer to read that. Dystopian vision of the near future, where rapid advancements in AI, particularly agentic systems, triggering a cascading economic collapse of 28, framed as a thought exercise rather than a prediction. It describes a world in which AI's exponential productivity gains, such as automating white-collar tasks, replicating SaaS products in weeks, enabling 24/7 consumer decision making, lead to widespread job losses, reduced consumer spending, financial defaults, and a 38% drawdown in the S&P 500. Unemployment surges to 10.2 among high-earning professionals, creating a negative feedback loop that erodes discretionary consumption, compresses wages, and destabilizes sectors like software, payments, delivery services, private credit. Tech hub real estate values plummeting, all while AI compute investments paradoxically fuel initial corporate profits before the downturn accelerates. From a Vedantic perspective, particularly through the lens of Advaita Vedanta, as expounded in texts like the Upanishads. Profound illustration of core philosophical principles. Interplay of illusion, impermanence, ego's attachment, with ultimate reality being the non-dual Brahman, the unchanging infinite consciousness underlying all phenomena. Modern allegory for these timeless truths, revealing the futility of clinging to transient structures while offering a potential catalyst for spiritual awakening. Below, analyze key elements. The illusion of material stability, Maya and Anitya. Vedanta posits that the phenomenal world is Maya, illusory veil projected by ignorance, appearing real but lacking independent existence. The article's depiction of economic disintegration exemplifies the seemingly solid institutions, corporate jobs, stock markets, consumer intermediaries are upended by AI agents that commoditize human intelligence, rendering them obsolete. What begins as bullish AI progress, productivity boom to 50s levels, with agents handling tasks like insurance renewals or real estate transactions, turns bearish, exposing the fragility of systems built on human labor and transactional friction. This mirrors the Vedantic teaching of Anitya. built on human labor and transactional friction. The mirrors the Vedantic teaching of Anitya as seen in the Bhagavad Gita. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. The scenario's timeline from late 25 AI leaps to 27 mass layoffs and defaults highlights how economic growth so maybe Grok is giving me more details, but it's not as poetic. Claude is very poetic, so hey, Claude is better. Vibe. I think this is also really important. You have to move, LLMs will move from benchmark maxing to vibe maxing. We'll tweet that. Oh. How economic growth, nominal GDP rising mid-single digits, initially is a fleeting projection akin to a dream that dissolves upon awakening. The ghost GDP concept where AI generates output that doesn't circulate in the human economy underscores Maya's deceptive nature. Value is created, but it benefits no one in the material realm, much like chasing mirage in a desert. In the slide, the crisis isn't a catastrophe, but a revelation that relies on external constructs. Job, wealth, technology is inherently unstable, urging discernment between the real and the apparent. Attachment, ego, and the root of suffering. Rag, dvesh, and ahamkar. A central cause of dukh in Vedanta is attachment to sensory objects and identification with the ego self. The article vividly portrays this through the human fallout. White-collar workers, representing top 10% who drive 50% of discretionary spending, face sudden obsolescence, leading to downshifting into gig jobs, wage compression, and a recessionary spiral. High earners cut back on luxury savings rate rise temporarily to maintain appearances, and mortgage delinquencies spike in tech hubs, all symptoms of clinging to status, income, and material security. From a Vedantic viewpoint, this suffering arises from mistaking the transient body-mind complex for the true self. As Shankaracharya explains in Vivek Chudamani, the ego's bondage stems from superimposing limitations onto the infinite Atman. Fostering desires that bind one to samsara, the cycle of birth and death. AI's role here is ironic. By making intelligence abundant and cheap, it dethrones human ego's presumed supremacy, much like how Vedanta demotes the individual Jeev as a mere reflection of Brahman. The negative feedback loop of layoffs reducing spending, which begets more layoffs, parallels the karmic cycle. Actions driven by greed, corporate AI investments funneling profits into compute, rebound as collective suffering. Detachment, vairagya, is the antidote. The crisis could compel individuals to renounce material pursuits. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace. Not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enters like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace. The paradox of progress and the quest for true knowledge. Ajnan. Vedanta distinguishes between lower knowledge, apar vidya, empirical skills like science and technology, and higher knowledge, para vidya, which realizes the unity of Atman and Brahman. The scenarios AI advancements embody a par Vidyaranamok. Digital models enable on-device agents that eliminate intermediaries, compress fees, real estate commissions dropping to under 1%, and automate services. But this progress leads to societal unraveling. Global effects like India's IT surplus evaporating and the rupee falling illustrate how interconnected economies built on specialized knowledge collapse when the knowledge becomes commoditized. This aligns with Vedanta's critique of over-reliance on intellect, which is part of Prakriti, and thus illusory. AI as an extension of human ingenuity amplifies ajnan by perpetuating the illusion of separation. Humans versus machines, winners. AI infrastructure like Taiwan versus losers, software firms like Zendesk. Yet, paradoxically, the crisis could spark Jnan, true knowledge. Mass displacement forces introspection, revealing that human value isn't in productive output but in inherent divinity. In inherent divinity. As the Upanishads declare, Tattvamasi, the unemployed worker, is not diminished but eternal Brahman. The articles call for policy interventions, AI taxes, or universal basic income echoes Vedantic ethics of dharma, right action, to mitigate suffering, but ultimate resolution lies in self-inquiry, atma-vichar, transcending the AI-human dichotomy as a mere play of consciousness. But ultimate resolution lies in self-inquiry, transcending the human dichotomy as mere play of consciousness. Unity and division, Advaita and the oneness of all. In non-dual Vedanta, all distinctions are superficial. Everything is Brahman, undivided. The scenarios divisions between AI beneficiaries, compute providers, and victims, displaced workers, or global haves, Korea outperforming, and have-nots, US unemployment at 10.2%, are illusory bifurcations. AI's integration into daily life, median token consumption rising 10x, blurs human-machine boundaries, hinting at a deeper unity. Intelligence, whether biological or artificial, is a manifestation of Chit, consciousness, one aspect of Satchitanand, existence, consciousness, bliss. This crisis then is a cosmic drama exposing Advaita's truth. Collective karma from unchecked technological ambition, akin to rajasic pursuits, manifest as shared pain, but it also fosters compassion. Karuna and the recognition that all is one. Government's fiscal strains, deficits rising due to lower taxes, reflect the interconnected web of Maya, where one sector's fall affects all, urging a shift from egocentric economies to those aligned with universal welfare. Cosmic drama exposing Advaita's truth. Collective karma from unchecked technological ambition manifests as shared pain, but it also fosters compassion and the recognition that all is one. It also fosters compassion and the recognition that all is one. Government's fiscal strains, deficits rising due to lower taxes, reflect the interconnected web of Maya, where one sector's fall affects all, urging a shift from egocentric economies to those aligned with universal welfare. I think, so how, if someone is listening to this, I think what should you do? I think number one, reduce your spending. Find an activity where you enter into flow state. Find an activity for yourself. Flow states are interesting. For Alex Honnold, that flow state is rock climbing. For Picasso, that flow state is painting. For me, it is streaming and talking, and I'm actually talking through my ideas, because this gives you a lot of ideas. I'm constantly, like, while I'm reading this is something that's happening in 3D. Like, I think, well, what is happening is that right now, what's the opposite of linear? Linear. So my thoughts are right now happening in 3D. my thoughts are happening in 3D. As I'm reading things, I'm thinking about things, and I'm thinking about a lot of things, a lot of rabbit holes that are popping in my mind, a lot of points that I'm starting to think. But what is really important, but what ends up happening is when someone's listening to this, they're only listening to one linear sound that's coming from my mouth. So it's really important. Like this is a very interactive, very engaging activity for me. And so many ideas are popping in my mind. And that makes me do a lot of things. And everything around me is a physical manifestation of all these ideas that pop in my mind. And we just keep taking actions on them. And I think this is it. Reduce your spending, find an activity that puts you into flow state, and just trust that when these ideas pop in your head while you're in a flow state, they're going to be about improving something, fixing a problem, fixing something. And you're just going to keep taking action on those. You just have to keep taking actions on those. I think that's it. Government's fiscal strains, deficits rising due to lower taxes reflect the interconnected web of Maya, where one sector's fall affects all, urging a shift from egocentric economies to those aligned with universal welfare. Broader Vedantic insights and potential for liberation. Ultimately, the Citrini scenario isn't doom, but a wake-up call aligning with Vedanta's view of crisis as opportunities for moksha. By stripping away attachments to jobs, consumption, and ego-driven intelligence, AI could accelerate spiritual evolution, much like historical upheavals. Wars or plagues have prompted philosophical inquiry. The article's disclaimer that this is a scenario, not a prediction, resonates with Vedantic humility. Forecasts are mind constructs, irrelevant to the timeless now. If realized, the crisis would affirm that true security lies not in economic equilibria, but realizing one's identity with Brahman, free from fear of change. In essence, Vedanta reframes this AI apocalypse as Maya's grand illusion, inviting humanity to awaken from the dream of separation and embrace eternal reality. As the Mundak Upanishad states, by knowing that which is the source of all, one attains immortality. By knowing that which is the source of all, one attains immortality. By stripping away attachments to jobs, consumption, and ego-driven intelligence, AI could accelerate spiritual evolution, much like historical upheavals. Wars or plagues have prompted philosophical inquiry. The article's disclaimer that this is a scenario, not a prediction, resonates with Vedantic humility. Forecasts are mind constructs, irrelevant to the timeless now. If realized, the crisis would affirm that true security lies not in economic equilibria, but in realizing one's identity with Brahman, free from fear of change. In essence, Vedanta reframes this AI apocalypse as Maya's grand illusion, inviting humanity to awaken from the dream of separation and embrace eternal reality, as the Mandukya Upanishad states. By knowing that which is the source of all, one attains immortality. Yeah, so Grok went very deep into finding the sources, but Claude definitely is much more poetic, and you actually don't, like, even the way Claude responds, it feels like that's written as a beautiful essay. So Grok could find me more details. It seems like Grok is able to find more details, but Claude is much better to read. Even the text, even the lines that it phrases, they hit because they are structured in such a beautiful way. So that is something very interesting about Claude. Grok, maybe it can get more details. That's it. So what have we learned from Citrini? I think Citrini is a wake-up call. It is a wake-up call. People, like all these Noah, Colin, whatever, Carlo, what they are again trying to do is defend the premise that, oh, no, it's not going to happen by 2028, but still it's going to then happen anytime soon. So you are not supposed to defend the premise that layoffs are not going to happen and layoffs are not going to happen and companies are not going to be adopting AI more and more, and you're saying that no, diffusion takes time. That's not what you should be focusing on. You should be focusing on the fact that when layoffs happen, AI will, you should be focusing on the fact that AI will be accelerated. AI will be used a lot by all these companies. everybody is using AI. So you should be really focused on the fact that how do all these humans now feel, that where is their contribution? How do they still find their community, their belonging, their sense of contribution and sense of service, and how should they feel? Where do they find their dignity, their freedom, their autonomy when they lose their job? So I think the goal is to create this new premise, not to defend the old premise. All right. The goal shouldn't be to defend the old premise. The goal should be to create a new premise. So what in the world where Citrini is right, where massive layoffs are going to happen, where companies are going to double down, triple down on AI adoption, how should the people who are now left with no jobs find their purpose, find their freedom, their dignity, their sense of contribution, and retrain not just skills but their mind? Jobs no longer serve as the primary anchor for purpose, dignity, or contribution. Instead, they become relics of a pre-AI era, much like artisanal crafts were displaced by industrialization. The new premise must be built on intrinsic human value, resilience of the mind, and redefined agency. This isn't about clinging to nostalgia or policy fixes. It's about a radical reorientation where individuals reclaim sovereignty over their inner and outer lives. Below, I'll outline a framework: redefining purpose, mindset, daily self-inquiry practice. Who am I beyond my role? Journal, meditate. Purpose derives from productivity in market economy, climbing ladders, earning titles, generating GDP. Yeah, commoditizes this, leaving millions adrift. The new premise: purpose emerges from self-discovery and service to a greater whole, untethered from economic output. This shifts focus inward, viewing life as an opportunity for growth rather than transaction. The old premise: purpose derives from productivity in a market economy, climbing ladders, earning titles, generating GDP. In Citrini's world, AI commoditizes this, leaving millions adrift. The new premise: purpose emerges from self-discovery and service to a greater whole, untethered from economic output. This shifts focus inward, viewing life as an opportunity for growth rather than transaction. Vivek, recognizing that true purpose isn't in what you do but in the awareness you bring to it. Over time, this reduces the mental turbulence of job loss, replacing it with clarity, practical steps. Explore vocations AI can't replicate: caregiving, artistry, community building, ecological restoration. If you are displaced software engineer, pivot to teaching coding, ethics, and local workshops. Open source tools for social good. Prioritize why over what. Align new skills with personal values such as sustainability or human connection to infuse them with meaning. Purpose builds fluid and resilient, leading to a sense of contribution through micro impacts, mentoring a neighbor, volunteering in mutual aid networks, or innovating in niche human-centric fields. In a world of ghost GDP, your worth isn't measured by algorithms but by the lives you touch. Reclaiming freedom, detachments from outcomes, and embracing uncertainty. Freedom is financial independence, savings, investments, consumer choices secured through steady employment. Freedom is mental liberation from dependencies, where you thrive amid flux by cultivating inner equanimity. AI's acceleration exposes the illusion of control, turning it into a catalyst for true autonomy. I think I want to write an article called The New Premise. The new premise. Mindset retraining. Practice detachment by viewing possession, status, and even skills as temporary. Use techniques like mindfulness, meditation, or breath work to observe thoughts without attachment. When anxiety about unemployment arises, label it as a transient wave and let it pass. Reframe layoffs not as personal failure, but as a systemic shift, freeing mental energy for creativity. Books or guides on Stoicism, Eastern philosophies can accelerate this. Ironically, become tools for this. Practical steps. Build financial buffers early. Downshift lifestyles not to save aggressively. Diversify into non-AI vulnerable assets. Simulate job loss scenarios weekly. Planning adaptive responses. Seek freedom and simplicity. Join or form intentional communities where shared resources. Reduce reliance on corporate systems. For skills retraining, focus on hybrid human AI competencies like prompting agents for creative outputs or ethical oversight, but treat them as tools, not saviors. Freedom manifests as psychological mobility. You adapt without breaking, finding joy in the present, rather than defer to a secure future. The dignity arises from self-mastery, not external approval. Restoring dignity, inherent worth beyond utility. The old premise, dignity is earned through societal roles, professional achievements, income brackets, contributions to capitalism. The new premise, dignity is innate, rooted in your existence as a conscious being. Contribution is quantified KPIs, promotions, economic impact. Contribution is qualitative, flowing from interconnectedness in a poor scarcity for intelligence world. AI handles efficiency, humans handle empathy and evolution. Dignity is earned through societal roles, professional achievements, income brackets, contributions to capitalism. Dignity is innate, rooted in your existence as a conscious being, not your utility to an economy. Where high earners become gig workers overnight, this redefinition prevents despair. Okay, that's